Hello, guys. I am very sorry for being late. 47 minutes late, actually. That's not good. So, how are you guys? Hi, Jay. Yeah, I'm very sorry for being late. What is with my voice? Is there something wrong with my voice? Well, I just did. That's why I'm late. Yeah, my alarm didn't go off, so that's why I'm late. We need a stick. Well, make a sticker then. Not naughty. Why naughty? Hey, kitty. Hi, hi. Hmm. What, for you to spam naughty mama? But I'm not naughty. That's you, isn't it? Hey, kitty. Hey, you. Well, let's get to it. We have reached chapter 16. Stop eating my book, you. in the book The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. So Darso gazed into the frothy brown ale, as if it held answers. It didn't, and he had a choice to make. The usual forced gaiety of the brothel swirled around him, but nobody, male or female, bothered him. Perhaps it was retribution unsheathed on the table in front of him. Perhaps it was merely the look on his face. "Don't hurt her," Azoth had yelled, as if Thurso would murder some 7-year-old girl. What kind of monster did the boy think he was? Then he remembered beating the shit out of the boy, artlessly pounding that yielding child flesh, beating him unconscious before Count Drake broke the door down and grabbed him. He'd almost killed Count Drake for that. He'd been so wild. The Count had fixed such a look on Durso. Damn, Count Drake and his damn holy eyes. That incandescent blue. Damn it. Damn all magic. In that flash of blue on retribution, he'd seen his hope die. The hope had been dying since Vonda died. But that blue was a door slamming shut forever. It meant Azoth was worthy as Durso was not. As if all of Durso's years of service were worth nothing. The boy was taking from him all that made him special. What did that leave for Durso Blint? Ashes. Ashes and blood, and nothing more. Suddenly, the sword retribution before him seemed a mockery. Retribution? Giving people what they deserve? If I really did that, I've shoved that damn blade down my own throat. The last time he'd been so close to madness had been when Wanda died. 4 months and 6 days ago. Sighing, he swirled the ale around in the glass, but he didn't drink. Time enough for that later. Later, after he made his decision, he'd need a drink. He'd need 12, no matter what he decided. He'd drunk a lot with Wanda. It pissed her sister off. Of course. The whole relationship had pissed Mama Kay off. She'd forbidden Durso to see her innocent little sister. She'd forbidden Wanda to see the wet boy. Mama Kay, so smart in the other matters, had probably done more to get their relationship going than anything. Surrounded by easy flesh, whether he paid for it or not, Guinevere's little sister was suddenly intriguing. He wanted to know if the virginal bit was an act. It was. He'd been disappointed, but had hidden it. It was hypocrisy. Anyway, and she'd had plenty of it, other mysteries. Wanda didn't always treat him well, but at least she didn't fear him. He didn't think she understood him enough to fear him. She seemed to just glide along on the surface of life, while others had to plunge into the sewer water. Durso hadn't understood her, and it had entranced him. After their affair started, he might have kept it secret. He could have. He knew Gwynweir's schedule enough that they could have kept things going for years, even with Gwynweir's insight. Durso knew how to be inscrutable, but it hadn't happened. Wanda had told her, probably announced it immediately. If Durso knew Wanda, it might have been a little callous, but Wanda didn't know what she was doing. End this now, Durso Blind, Gwynweir had told him, quite calmly. She'll destroy you. I love my sister, but she will be your ruin. It had all been words, words to get Gwynweir's way, as always. With all her power, it infuriated her that she couldn't run the lives of those she really wanted to. She'd been right, of course. Maybe not in the way she had meant it, but she'd been right. Gwynweir always had understood him better than anyone else, and he understood her. They were mirrors to each other. Gwynweir Kirina would have been perfect for him. If he could love what he saw in the mirror. Why am I thinking about this? It's all old shit. It's all finished. There was a choice to be made. Did he raise the boy and hope? Or did he kill him now? Hope. Right. Hope is the lies we tell ourselves above the future. He'd hoped before, dared to dream about a different life. But when it came time, you look pensive, Galen Starfire. A Ladashian, Bard said, seating himself across from Durso without waiting to be asked. I'm deciding who to kill. Call me that again, and you jump to the front of the list. Aristarchus. The bard smiled with the confidence of a man who knows he has perfect white teeth that only set off a handsome face by the night angels. We've been awfully curious about what's been happening for the last few months. You and the society can go to hell, Durso said. I think you like the attention, Durso Blind. If you wanted us dead, we'd be dead. Or are you really bound by this code of retribution? It's of considerable debate in the society. Hi, Prepsy! Hi, sweetheart. Still fighting over the same questions, huh? Don't you all have anything better to do? Talk, talk, talk. Why don't you do something productive for once? We are trying, Durso. In fact, that's why I'm here. I want to help you. How kind. You've lost it, haven't you? Aristarchus asked. Have you lost it, or has it abandoned you? Do the stones really choose their own masters? Durso noticed he was spinning the knife from finger to finger again. It wasn't to intimidate the Ladashian, who, laudably enough, didn't even glance at it. It just kept his hands busy. It was nothing. He stopped it. Here's why I've never been friends with any of you. Aristarchus, I don't know if your little circle has ever been interested in me, or if it's only interested in my power. Once, I was almost convinced to share some of my mysteries, but I realized that what I share with one of you, I share with all of you. So tell me, why would I give my enemies such power? Is that what we've come to? Aristarchus asked. Enemies? Why? Then do you not wipe us from the face of the earth? You are uniquely suited to do this task. I don't kill without a cause. Fear isn't enough to motivate me. It may be beyond your comprehension, but I can hold power without using it. Aristarchus stroked his chin. Then you are a better man than many have feared. I see now why you were chosen in the first place. Aristarchus stood. Know this, Dursoblend. I am far from home and have not the means I might wish, but if you call on me, I will give you what help I can. And knowing that you have deemed the cause just will be enough explanation for me. Good day. The man walked out of the brothel, smiling and winking at the whores, but seemed disappointed to lose his business. He wore his charm like a mask, Durso saw. The masks change, but the maskers remain the same, don't they? Durso have lived with the bilge waste of humanity for so long. He saw filth in every heart. He knew the filth was there. He was right about that. Filth and darkness were even in Rimbold Drake's heart. But Drake didn't act from the darkness, did he? No. The masker, if only that one, had changed. Fear isn't enough to motivate me, he'd said, while planning to murder a child. What kind of a monster am I? He was caught now, truly and desperately caught. He'd just killed Corbin Fishhill. The man's death had been sanctioned by the Shinga and the rest of the Nine. Corbin had been managing the guilds as if he were in Calidor, setting guild against guilds, encouraging open war between them, and doing absolutely nothing to regulate brutality within the guilds. Caledorans did such thing in the belief that the best would naturally rise, but the Sarkage wanted members, not monsters. Worse, they now had some indication that Corbin actually had been working for Calidor. That was inexcusable. Not taking the work, but taking it without reporting it to the rest of the nine. Loyalties had to be to the Sarkage first. The kill had been sanctioned, and it had been just. That didn't mean that Corbin's friends would accept it. Durso had killed members of the Nine before, but he always took extra care to conceal whose work it was. Now Azoth had trumped around his killing grounds for hours. A little before the job was done, and a lot after. Enough people knew or guessed Durso had taken Azoth in his apprentice that they couldn't fail to link the two. It was sloppy wet work, they'd say. Maybe Durso Blind is slipping. Being the best made him a target. The appearance of weakness gave every second-rate wet boy hope that they could move up. Azoth couldn't have known, of course. Still didn't know so many things. But in that flash of blue light from Retribution's blade, Durso had seen his own death. If he let the boy live, Durso would die. Sooner or later. And there it was. The divine economy. For someone to live, someone had to die. Durso Blind made his decision and started drinking. Master Blind hasn't come to see me. No, Mama Kay said. It's been 4 days. You said he wasn't mad anymore, Esau said, making fists with his hands. He thought he had cut them, but they were fine. Lots of other places on his body hurt. So he hadn't just imagined being beaten, but his hands were fine. 3 days, and he's not mad. Drink this. No, I don't want any more of that stuff. It makes me feel worse. He regretted the words as soon as he said them. Mama Kay's eyebrows went up and her eyes went cold. Even huddled in warm blankets in a spare bedroom here in her house, when her eyes turned frosty, nothing could make you feel warm. Child, let me tell you a story. Have you ever heard of the Snake of Haran? Azoth shook his head. The snake has 7 heads, but each time you cut one off, 2 more grow in its place. Really? There is such a thing? No. In Haran, they call it the Snake of Ladash. It's imaginary. Then why did you tell me about it? Azoth asked. Are you being deliberately obtuse? When he didn't answer, she said, "If you'll let me finish, you'll see the story is an analogy." Analogies are lies grown-ups tell. Why? Being stuck in bed was making Asos petulant. Why does anyone tell lies? Because they're useful. Now drink your medicine and then shut your mouth, Mama Kay said. Asos knew he was pushing it, so he didn't ask any more. He drank the thick mint and anise flavored brew. Right now, the Sarkage has his own Snake of Haran. Asos, Kylor, do you know Corbin Fischel? Asos nodded. Corbin was the handsome, impressive young man who had sometimes come and talked to Jalil. Corbin was one of the 9. He ran the children's guilds. Was? Asos almost squeaked. He wasn't supposed to know Corbin was even important, much less how important. Durso killed him 3 days ago. When the baby farms were shut down, the Sarkage was given a chance to literally raise its own army. But Corbin was allowing or encouraging guild war that was wiping out the slave-born. And he was a spy. The Sarkage thought he was a Suran spy. But now they think he was taking money from the Kalidor. The Kalidorans paid him in Suran gold. Probably in case he was found. And also so he wouldn't start spending the money immediately and bring attention to himself. Now that Corbin was dead, his things have been searched, and unfortunately, there hasn't been any clear answer. He was Caladoran. He was far more dangerous than we had thought, and the Sarkage would have brought him in and had him tortured until they knew for sure. But at that time, they thought it was more important to set a graphic example of what happens to those who mismanage Sarkage endeavors. The problem now is bigger. We don't think Corbin was in place long enough to cultivate any loyalty to Kalidor among the guilds. Street rats don't care much about where their meals come from. But the fact Kalidor would work on taking over the guilds tells us that they are thinking long term. How do you know he wasn't just the easiest person they could get in the Sarkage? Mama Kay smiled. We don't. Kalidor is putting down some rebellions right now, and it's not going well for them. But the God King has earned a reputation as a man who plans for victory. And my guess is that he thinks it may be years before he's ready to march south. But he wants an area to fall in the slightest blow when he does. If he controls the Sarkage, taking the city will be easy. Our problem is that if he was able to get a man as highly placed as Corbin, then there may be dozens of others. The other heads of the snake may show up at any time. Anyone we trust may be working for Kalidor. Why is that your problem? Azoth asked. It's my problem because I'm one of the 9 too, Kylar. I'm the mistress of pleasures. Azoth's mouth formed a little O. Always before the Sarkage had been something dangerous, huge and distant. He supposed it fit. Everyone knew Mama Kay had been a whore and that she was wealthy, but he never even thought of it. Being the mistress of pleasures meant that Mama Kay controlled all of the prostitution in Scenaria. Everyone who plied the pleasure trade ultimately answered to her. She smiled. Aside from my girls, more strenuous duties, they also keep their ears open. You'd be amazed how talkative men can be in front of what they think is just a dumb whore. I'm in charge of the Sarkay spies. I need to know what Calidor's doing. If I don't know, the Sarkay doesn't know. And if we don't know, the country may fall. Believe me, we do not want Garroth Urshul as our king. Why are you telling me all of this? Azoth said. I'm nobody. Azoth was nobody. You're about to become Kylar Stern, she said. And I think you're smarter than Durso gives you credit for. I'm telling you because we need you on our side. Azoth was stupid to go wandering the other day, and it may cost you or Durso your lives. But if you had known what was happening, you wouldn't have gone there. You did the wrong thing. She is a big mama, yeah. You did the wrong thing, but Durso shouldn't have beaten you for showing initiative. In fact, I'm sure he's sorry for beating you, though he'll never apologize. It isn't in the man to admit he's wrong. We need you to be more than an apprentice, Kylar. We need you to be an ally. Are you ready for that? Azoth, Kylar, nodded slowly. What do you want me to do? Chapter 17. Kylar tried to gawk at the right things as he was ushered through the Geyer estate. Azoth, Mama Kay had told him, would gawk at anything big or gold. Baronet Kylar Stern would gawk only at things for both. And the art. Logan had invited him to visit to make amends for hating him, and Kylar's first job for the Sarkage was to make sure they became friends. The porter escorted him to another, better dressed man. Kyla almost greeted him as Duke Geyer before realizing he must be the Geyer's chamberlain. The chamberlain took him through a vast entry hall with dual stairs that climbed 3 stories, flanking an enormous marble statue of 2 men. Twins facing each other in battle, each seeing the same opening in the other's defense, each lunging. It was one of the most famous statues in the world, Mama Kay had told Kyler. The Krask twins' doom. In history, Mama Kay said, the Krask twins had been heavily armored, and during a long battle each had lost the thin tabards that at that time were all men wore over plate mail, and that identified them if they were separated from their standard bearers. They had indeed killed each other, though each had avoided the other earlier battles. Here the men were naked except for shield and sword. Because of the shield's placement, each was seeing his twin's face for the first time, even as he struck the death blow. The chamberlain took Kyler up the stairs and down one long wing of the estate. The hallway was wider than most of the alleys in the Warrens. Both sides were crowded with marble busts and paintings of men speaking, men fighting, men seizing women, families moving, women mourning, the aftermath of battles, and horrible monsters boiling out of gaps in the ground. Every picture was framed with heavy gold leaf. Most were big. Walking behind the chamberlain, Kyler would gawk as much as they wanted, and he did. Then they stopped at a huge door. The chamberlain rapped on it with the staff he carried and opened the door to a library with dozens of shelves in orderly rows and the walls lined with books and scrolls to the height of 2 stories. My lord, Baronet Kyler Stern. Logan Geyer rose from a table with an open scroll laid across it. Kyler, I was just finishing. I borrowed this scroll from... Oh, never mind. Welcome. Thank you for inviting me to Geyer. Your estate is beautiful. The statue of the Krask twins is breathtaking. He was reciting it in the way Mama Kay had taught him, but now he meant it. Please, call me Logan. You're most kind. You really like it? Logan asked. The "you're most kind" gave him away. Logan was trying as hard to be an adult as Kyler was. Kyler was nervous because he was a fraud, but Duke Logan felt like a fraud too. The title was too big and too new for him to feign comfort convincingly. So Kyler answered honestly, actually, I think it's amazing. I just wish they weren't naked. Logan burst out laughing. I know, most of the time I don't notice it anymore, but every once in a while I come in the door and these 2 huge naked men in my house. Because of my new duties, I'm meeting all of my father's retainers and friends. again. Really, it's a chance for ladies to introduce their daughters and hope I fall madly in love. I was greeting a lady and her daughter, I won't name names, but they are beautiful women and very prim, very modest. So I'm pretty tall, right? And they both have to really look up to look me in the eye. And as I'm talking, and I'm in the middle of a story, and the mom is tittering and the daughter's looks utterly captivated, and I start to wonder if I got something in my hair or in my ear or something. Because they both keep glancing just a bit to the side. Oh no, Kyla said, laughing. I glance over my shoulder and there's 3 times life size. It's marble, genitalia. And there's this moment where they realize that I've noticed that they've been looking over my shoulder the whole time. And I realize this is the first time that the daughter has ever seen a naked man. And I totally forget what story I was telling them. They laughed together. Kyla desperately thankful that Logan had given enough context so he could figure out what genitalia meant. Did all nobles talk like this? What if next time Logan gave the punchline without context? Logan pointed to a portrait on the library wall of the square-jawed, bald man dressed in an unfamiliar style. I have to thank him for that, my great-great-grandfather, the art lover. Kyla smirked, but he felt he'd been slapped. Logan knew things about his great-great-great-grandfather. Kyla didn't even know who his father was. There was a silence, and Kyla knew it was his turn to fill it. I heard that the Krask twins actually led like 6 battles against each other. You know their story? Logan asked. Not many people our age do. Belatedly, Kyla realized the risk of posing as a story lover to this man who loved books and could actually read them. I really like old stories, Kyla said. But my parents don't really have any use for me wasting my time filling my head with stories. You really do like stories? Elaine always starts pretending to snore when I talk about history. Elaine? Oh, Elaine Gunder. Prince Elaine Gunder, the 10. Logan's world really was different. Look at this, he beckoned Kyler to the table. Here, read this part. Be happy to, if I could read. Kyler's heart seized up. His disguise was still so fragile. You're making me feel like my tutors, he said, waving it off. I don't want to read for an hour while you're twiddling your thumbs. Why don't you tell me the good parts? I feel like I'm doing all the talking, Logan said, suddenly awkward. It's kind of rude. Kyla shrugged. I don't think you're being rude. It's a new story, or what? Logan's eyes lit up, and Kyla knew he was safe. No, it's the end of the Alcestia cycle. Right before the 7 kingdoms fall. My father's having me study the great leaders of the past. In this case, Georgian Alcestis. Of course, when they were under siege at Black Barrow, his right-hand man, Ezra the Mad. Well, It wasn't Black Marrow yet. Sorry, Black Barrow yet. And Ezra didn't go hide out in Ezra's wood for another 50 years or something. Anyway, Ezra's may be the best makers ever, behind Emperor Jorsen Alcestis himself. They're under siege at what's now Black Barrow, and Ezra starts making the most amazing stuff. The war hammers of Oren Raisin, fire and lightning traps, even untalented soldiers can use. Kurok, the sword of power, Uri's the staff of law, and then these 6 magic artifacts, Kakari. They each look like a glowing ball, but the 6 champions can squeeze one, and it melts and covers their whole bodies like a second skin and gives them power over their element. They like to playing with balls here, Pripsy. Arika's Dadrul gets this skin of silver liquid metal that makes him impervious to blades. Corvair Blackwell becomes Corvair the Red, the Master of Fire. Trace Avagulania goes from grossly ugly to the most beautiful woman in the era. Oren Racing gets Earth, weighs 1,000 pounds and turns his skin to stone. But Pripsy's balls? I don't know, Ginger. Irenea Blockware gets the power of everything green and growing. Strat Marden gets water and can suck the very liquid from a man's blood. The thing that has always made me curious is that Josen Alcestis was a great leader. He brought together so many talented people, and lots of them were difficult and egotistical, and he put them in harness together, and they worked. But at the end, he insults one of his best friends, Achilles Thorn, and gives a Kakari to Strat Marden instead, whom he doesn't even like. Do you know Achilles Thorn? I've heard the name, Kyler offered. That much was true. Sometimes the gill rats would huddle around a window to one of the taverns when a bard visited, but they could only hear bits and pieces of the stories. Oh, never mind. Someone there can suck liquid. Yeah. Achilles was the amazing fighter, but a noble fool. No subtlety. He hated lies, politics, and magic. But put a sword in his hand and he'd go charging an enemy force solo if he had to. He was so crazy and so good that his men would follow him anywhere. But he was all about honor, and seeing lesser men honored before him was a huge insult. It was that insult that led Achilles to betray Jorsen. How could Jorsen have missed it? He had to have known he was insulting him. What do you think? Oh, for fuck's sake, Craig! Ah, scared the crap out of me! Hi, sweetheart. Jesus Christ. Hi. Was that punishment for going to bed late? Jesus Christ. Holy moly. That was not fair. Ay, ay, ay. What do you think? Kyler asked. Logan scrubbed a hand through his hair. It's probably something boring, like that there was a war going on and everyone was exhausted and starving and not thinking clearly and Jorsen just made a mistake. So what does this teach you about being a leader? Kyler asked. Logan looked perplexed. Eat your vegetables and get enough sleep. How about be nice to your inferiors and or they might kick your ass, Kyler suggested. Are you asking me to spar? Baronet Stern. You exalted Dougliness. It will be my pleasure to take you down. Chapter 18. Kylo stepped into the safe house, flushed from his victory. He got 3 touches to Logan's 2. Logan fought better, but as Mama Kay had told Kyler, he also grown a foot in the last year and hadn't adjusted to his new height yet. Not only did I just make Logan Geyer my friend, Kyla said, I also beat him in sparring. Durso didn't even look up from the calcinator. He turned the flame up higher beneath the copper dash. Good. Now never spar with him again. Hand me that. Hurt. Kyla took a flask from under the whirling tubes of the alembic and gave it to him. Durso poured the thick blue mixture into the calcinator. For the moment, it sat there still. Small bubbles began forming, and within moments the mixture was boiling rapidly. Why not? Kyla asked. Get the slops, boy. Kyla grabbed the pig's slop bowl and brought it to the table. We fight differently from what any of the city sword masters teach. If you spar with Logan, I you will adopt his by the book style and become a worthless fighter. Or you'll give away that you're being taught something utterly different. Or both. Kyla scowled at the calcinator. His master was right. Of course. And even if he weren't, his word was law. Law? Again, something about law. The blue mixture was now a dark blue powder. Durso lifted the copper plate from the flames with a thick wool pad and scraped the powder into the slop bowl. He grabbed another copper plate and poured more of the blue mixture into it and put it above the flames. Setting the first aside to cool with a heavy mitt. Master, do you know why Jorsen Alcestas would insult his best friend by not giving him a Kakari? Oh, Rob! Coming in with a tier 3 sub. This subscribe for 7 months. 7 months streak. You're amazing. Thank you so much, sweetie. I really appreciate you. How are you, Robbie? Are you good? It's been a while since I've talked to you. Continue? No, I want to know how you are. Okay. Maybe he asked too many questions. Logan said Akela's Thorn was the most honorable of Jorsen's friends, but he betrayed Jorsen and that led to the fall of the Seven Kingdoms, Kylar said. Most people aren't strong enough for our creed, Kylar, so they believe comforting illusions, like the gods, or justice, or the basic goodness of man. Those illusions fail in war. It breaks men. Hi, sweetheart. Hi. I am continuing. Aw, makes me so happy that you're here. Those illusions fail in war. It breaks men. That's probably what happened to Achilles. Are you sure? Kyler asked. Logan's reading of it had been so different. Sure, Blint asked scornfully. I'm not sure about what the nobles here did 7 years ago, when they ended slavery. How would anyone be sure about what happened hundreds of years ago far away? Take that to the pig. Kyla picked up the slobs and took them to the pig they recently acquired for Master Blint's experiments. As he was returning, he saw Blint staring at him as if about to say something. Then there was a small whoosh as flame leaped from the copper plate behind Master Blint. Before Kyla could flinch, Blint whirled around. A phantom hand stretched out from his hands and grabbed the metal plate directly from the fire and set it down on the table. Then the hand was gone. It happened so fast, Kylar wasn't sure he had imagined it. The plate was smoking, and what should have been blue powder was now a black crust. A black crust that Kylar had no doubt he would soon be scraping off until the copper shone. Blint swore. See? You get caught up in the past and you become useless to the present. Come on, let's see if that stinking pig's still alive. Then, we need to do something with your hair. The pig wasn't still alive, and after the amount of poison it had ingested, it wasn't safe to eat. So Kyla spent half the day cutting it into pieces and burying it. After that, Master Blint made him strip to the waist and rubbed a pungent paste through his hair. It burned his scalp, and Blint made him keep it in for an hour. But when he finally rinsed the hair clean, Blint showed him his own reflection in the glass, and he barely recognized himself. His hair was white blonde. Just be thankful you're young, or I would have had to smear it on your eyebrows too, Blint said. Now get dressed. The ASOS clothes, the ASOS persona. I get to go with you? On a job? Get dressed. I understand why apparent consumption is 900 gunders. I'm sure you have to do multiple poisoning to mimic the disease, the noble said. But 1500 for apparent self-murder? Ridiculous. Stab your man and put the knife in his hand. How about we start again? Master Blind said quietly. You speak as if I'm the best wet boy in the city, and I'll speak as if there's a chance this side of hell that I'll take the job. The tension sat thick in the upstairs room of the inn. Lord General Brand Aegon wasn't pleased, but he took a breath, ran a hand through his grey hair, and said, "Why does faking a suicide cost 1500 gold? A properly staged suicide takes months," Master Blind said, "depending upon the debtor's history. If I'm after a known melancholic, that can be shortened to 6 weeks. If he tried to suicide before, it can be as little as a week. I gain access in one way or another and administer special concoctions." Asos was trying to pay attention. Asos was trying to pay attention, but there was something about being back in his old clothes that made the illusions of the last weeks come crushing down. Kyla was gone, and not because Athos was following orders and pretending to be Azoth. Kyla had been a mask of confidence. It had fooled Logan, and it had fooled Azoth for a little while. But the mask had fallen away. He was Azoth. He was weak. He didn't understand what he was doing here, or why. He was scared. Blind continued, not so much as glancing at him. The debtor becomes depressed, withdrawn, suspicious. Symptoms gradually worsen. Then maybe a favorite pet dies. The target is already peevish and paranoid, and soon he lashes out at his friends. The friends who visit, at least those who take refreshment, grow irritably while they are with the debtor. They quarrel. They stop visiting. Sometimes the target writes the note himself. Sometimes he even commits the suicide himself, though I monitor that closely to make sure he chooses an appropriate method for the effect desired. When given proper time, no one suspects anything but self-murder. The family itself will often hush up the details and scatter what little evidence there is. "By the High King's beard, is such a thing possible?" the Lord General asked. "Possible, yes. Difficult, very. It takes a considerable number of careful mixed poisons. Do you know that everyone reacts differently to poisons? And a huge amount of my time. If a forged note is required, the target's correspondence and journals are analyzed so that not only the handwriting, but also the writing style and even certain choices of wording are identical." Durso smiled wolfishly. "Assassination is an art, milord, and I'm the city's most accomplished artist." How many men have you killed? The Lord General asked. Suffice it to say, I'm never idle. The man fiddled with his beard and continued looking through the handbill Master Blint had given him, obviously unsettled. May I ask about others, Master Blint? He said, suddenly respectful. I prefer that you only inquire about those deaths you're seriously considering, Master Blint said. Why is that? I value secrets very highly, as I must. Though I don't like to discuss my methodology, and, to be honest, knowing too much tends to frighten those who employ me. I had a client some time ago who was very proud of his defenses. He asked me how I'd fulfill a contract on him. He irritated me, so I told him. Afterward, he tried to hire another whip boy to kill me. He was turned down by every professional in Scenaria. He ended up hiring an amateur. You give yourself the statue of a legend, the Lord General said, his thin face pinching. Of course Durso Blint was a legend. Who would hire him if they didn't know that? At the same time, hearing Master Blint speak of his trade to a noble, to someone like Count Drake, was eerie. It was like Azor's two worlds were being pressed uncomfortably close to each other, and he could feel the noble awe in himself. In the guild, Durso Blint had been a legend because he had power, because people were afraid of him. And he had never had to be afraid of anyone. That was what had drawn Azoth to him. But this noble was odd for different reasons. To him, Durso Blint was a creature of the night. He was a man who could come violate those things he held dear. He undermined all of what the Lord General had thought safe. The man didn't look afraid. He looked disgusted. I'm not suggesting that I terrify every wet boy in the city, Master Blint smiled. The fact is that we professionals are, if not a close group, at least a small one. We are colleagues, some of us even friends. The second wet boy he went to was Scarred Vrabel. I've heard of him, Brant Aegon said. Apparently the second best assassin in the city. Wet boy, Blint corrected, and a friend of mine. He told me what this client was doing. After that, well, if a military metaphor works better for you, it would be like trying a small raid on a city that was expecting it instead of an unsuspecting city. In the second case, it might work. In the first, it's suicide. I see, the Lord General said. He paused for a moment. Apparently surprised Master Blint knew who he was, then suddenly grinned. And you are a tactician too. How so? You haven't had many contracts taken out on you since you started telling that story, have you? Master Blint smiled broadly. These were two men, Asa saw, who understood each other. Not a one, after all. Diplomacy is an extension of warfare, Blint said. We usually say that warfare is an extension of diplomacy, Brent Aegon said, and I think I agree with you. I once found myself outnumbered and forced to hold a position against the Ley Knot for 2 days to wait for reinforcements. I had some captives, so I put them in a vulnerable position and told their guards we would receive reinforcements at dawn. During the fighting, the prisoners were allowed to get free and promptly told their superiors the news. The Ley Knot army was so disheartened that they held back until we had been reinforced. That diplomacy saved our lives. Which brings us back to the matter at hand, the Lord General said. I need some diplomacy. That's not on the list of yours. I'm afraid I've not been completely forthright with you, Master Blint, the Lord General said. I'm here for the king. Master Blint? Just give me a sec, guys. Sorry about that, guys. Sound like an explosion outside. Now where were we? Oh yeah. I'm afraid I've not been completely forthright with you, Master Blint, the Lord General said. I'm here for the king. Master Blint's face went suddenly devoid of emotions. I understand that by telling you that, we might lose the man who provided me with your name. But the king deems this to be worth risking the lives of both the contact and one of his ministers, namely myself. You haven't done anything foolish, like surrounding the building with soldiers, have you? Master Blint asked. Nothing of the kind. I'm here alone. Then you've made one wise choice today. More than one. We've chosen you, Master Blint. And I've chosen to be honest with you, which I hope you appreciate. As you know, the king's wealthy, but not politically or militarily strong. That's a bitter pill, but it's not news. Our kings haven't been strong for 100 years. Elaine Gunder wishes to change that. But, in addition to internal struggles of which you no doubt know more than I'd care to learn, the king has recently learned of some rather devious plots to steal vast sums of money, not only from the treasury, but in a multitude of schemes, also from almost every nobleman in the country. The idea being, we think that scenario becomes so impoverished that we'll be unable to maintain an army. Sounds like a lot of money to steal without anybody noticing, Master Blint said. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has noticed. He's the one arranging it, but no one else has noticed yet. The schemes are little short of brilliant. The plot won't even ripen for 6 or 10 years. Men are being placed in key positions and have as yet have done nothing wrong. There's more, much more, but you don't need to know it. What do I need to know? Blind asked, his eyes heavy-lidded. I've made a study of you, Master Blint, the Lord General said. Though information about you is difficult to find, everyone knows that the Sarkage hold an enormous amount of power here. People outside the country knows it. Kalidor knows it. The king needs you for more than a dozen jobs spanning years. Some will involve simple assassinations. Some will involve information planting, and some will not involve killing at all, but simply being seen. God King Ursul must believe the Sarkage and its assets have an alliance with us. You want me to become a government agent? Not exactly. And I suppose you'd give me a pardon for all I've done, Master Blind asked. I've been authorized to offer that. Master Blind stood, laughing. No, Lord General. Good day. I'm afraid I can't take no for an answer. The king has forbidden it. I do hope you're not planning on threatening my life, Master Blind said. First, the Lord General said, looking at Azoth for the first time, we'll kill the boy. Master Blind shrugged. So? Chapter 19. And we'll kill your lover. I believe her name's Vonda. You can kill the bitch, but that might give you some trouble, considering she's 4 months dead. The Lord General didn't even pause. And we'll kill this Mama Karina, who seems to be your only friend. Then we'll come after you. I don't want it to be this way, but this is what the king offers. You're making 2 mistakes, Master Blind said. First, you're assuming that I value other people's lives more than my own. How can you know what I do and believe such a thing? Second, you assuming that I value my own life. Please understand, I'm under orders. Personally, I'd rather have nothing to do with you, the Lord General said. I think it's beneath the dignity of a king to hire criminals. I think it's immoral and foolish for him to put money in your purse rather than chains on your wrists. I find you abhorrent, a wreck of a human being, barely resembling what once must have been a man. But the king has decided we need a sellsword like you. I'm a soldier. I've been sent to get you, and I won't fail. And you're making a tactical blunder, Master Blint said. The king might kill my apprentice, my friend, and even me. But at the least, he will have lost his Lord General. A poor trade. I don't think he would find my death to be such a very great loss, the Lord General said. Ah, figured that out, have you? Blind asked. This may be the first time you've seen me, Brent Aegon, but it isn't the first time I've seen you. The Lord General looked puzzled. So you've seen me. So have half the people in the city. Does your wife still crouch aside of the bed? Sweet, isn't it? Does she still wear the drab nightgown with the daisies embroidered on the hem? You really love her, don't you? Lord General Aegon froze. You call me abhorrent, Durso asked. You owe me your life. What? Didn't you even wonder why you got a promotion instead of a knife in the back? From his eyes, even Azoth could tell that the Lord General had. I was in your house the night King David died, when you and Regnisgeir met. I was to kill your wife as a warning to you later. The prince would offer you a better marriage to a young noblewoman who would be able to give you sons. And I was authorized to kill both you and Regnis if you were plotting treason. I spared you, and I don't get paid unless I leave corpses. I don't expect your gratitude, Lord General, but I demand your respect. Lord General Aegon's face went grey. You told Elaine that my price was the promotion. He thought he bought me off with a promotion rather than a wife. Athos could see him mentally reviewing comments he must have heard over the last 4 months and getting sicker and sicker. Why? You're the illustrious general, the old war hero. You tell me, Durso sneered. Putting me in charge of the army divided the Sarkage enemies. It kept the king from putting someone he could trust in charge of the military. You bastards have got people everywhere, don't you? Me? I'm just a sellsword. I'm just a wreck of a human being. The general's face was still grey, but his back never bent an inch. You've given me much to think about, Master Blint. Though I still believe the murders you've committed merit hanging, I dishonored you and myself with my hasty words. I apologize. Hi, Inky! Inky with the teacher stopping by to show some love. How are you? Oh, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you. I'm really good. Just doing some reading. Um, we're reading The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. For those who are at work, so they have something to listen to.
Yes! Yes!
Oh, thank you for that, Ginger. Not necessarily. Well, we like to show appreciation to the family. So, how are you? What have you been up to? Well, let's see where we were. I apologize. My apology, however, has no effect on the king's determination that to serve him. I. Get out, Master Blint said. Get out. If you reconsider your threats, I'll be here for a few minutes. The general rose and, watching Master Blint carefully, walked to the door. He opened it and kept his eyes on Master Blint until he closed the door behind him himself. Azoth heard his steps echo down the hall. I'm great, just working a little bit this morning before the gym later. How's your morning? Morning was stressful actually because I my alarm didn't go off, so I was 40 minutes late into streaming. Um, but other than that, good. So we're just doing some reading for all you guys that are at work or working at home, so you have something to listen to. We do that every Tuesday and Thursday. Master Blint stared at the door and scooted back from the table. Instead of relaxing now that the general was gone, he tensed. Everything about him spoke of potential action. He looked like a mongoose waiting for a serpent to strike. Step away from the door, Azoth, he said. Stand by the window. There were no hesitation. Azoth had learned that lesson. He didn't have to understand. He just had to obey. He heard a crash on the stairs and loud cursing. Azoth stood by the window and looked at Master Blint, but the man's pockmarked face betrayed nothing. Moments later, the door banged open. The Lord General lurched in, sword drawn. "What have you done?" he roared. His knee bowed and he leaned heavily against the doorframe to keep from falling. Master Blint didn't say anything. The general blinked and tried to straighten. But a spasm passed through his body as his stomach cramped. And it passed, and he said, "How?" "I put a contact poison on the door latch," Master Blint said. "It seeps right through the skin." "But if we reached a deal," the Lord General said, "I'd have opened the door for you. If you had worn gloves, I had other plans. Now I want you to listen very closely. The king is an incompetent, treacherous, foul-mouthed child. So I'm going to make this very clear. I'm a first-rate wet boy. He's a second-rate king. I won't work for him. If you want, you can hire me yourself. I'll kill the king, but I won't kill for him. And there's no way you or he can pressure me. I know he won't believe that, because Elaine Gunder is the kind of man who believes he can get whatever he wants. So here's why he's going to believe." Master Blint stood. "First, I'm going to leave a message for him tonight in the castle. Second, you're going to investigate what happened to Count Yusser Glynn. He was the client who betrayed me. Third, there's what has already happened to you. And fourth, do sit, Aegon, and put away the sword. It's insulting." Lord General Aegon crashed into a chair. The long sword fell from his fingers. He didn't appear to have the strength to pick it up. Regardless, his eyes were still clear, and he was hearing every word Master Blint said. "Lord General, I don't care who he kills. I know you have this inn surrounded, that there are crossbowmen covering the window of this room. They don't matter. More importantly, the king's threat don't matter. I will be no man's lapdog. I serve who I will, when I will, and I will never serve Elaine Gunder. Azoth, come here." Azoth went to his master, wondering why Blint has used his name. He stood in front of Master Blint, who rested his hands on Azoth's shoulder and turned him to face General Aegon. "Azoth here is my best apprentice. He's agile, he's smart. He learned things after being told once. He works tirelessly. Azoth, tell the general what you learned about life." Without hesitation, Azoth said, "Life is empty. Life is meaningless. When we take a life, we aren't taking anything of value. Wet boys are killers. That's all we do. That's all we are. There are no poets in the bitter business." "Lord General," Blint said, "are you with me?" "I'm with you," the general said, fire raging in his eyes. Master Blint's voice was ice. "Then know this. I'd kill my own apprentice before I let you use him against me. The general jerked sharply in his chair as if shocked. He was staring at Asos. Asos followed his gaze to his own chest. Several inches of bloodied steel were protruding from him. Asos saw them and felt an uncomfortable pushing, spreading sensation from his back all the way through his center. It seemed cool, then warm, then painful. He blinked, his eyes slowly, and looked back to the general, whose eyes was full of horror. Asos looked at the steel. He recognized the blade. He cleaned it that day he went looking for Dolgo. He hoped Master Blint would at least wipe it down before he brought it back for Asos to clean. It had filigree on the blade that held blood if you let it dry there. Asos had to use the point of a stiletto to pick it out. It took hours. Then Asos was drawn to the location of the dagger, at the angle on a child's chest. It would have clipped the fat vessel above the heart. If so, the dagger would have gone down as soon as the dagger was drawn out. There would be a lot of blood. The dagger would die within seconds. Asos' body jerked as the dagger disappeared. He was vaguely aware of his knees folding. He slumped over sideways and felt something warm spilling over his chest. The wood planks of the floor jostled him unmercifully as he sprawled over them. He lay facing up. Master Blint was holding a bloody dagger in his hand and saying something. Did Master Blint just stab me? Asos couldn't believe it. What had he done? He thought Master Blint had been pleased with him. It must have been Dolgo. He must still have been mad about it. It had seemed things were going so well. There were white gold light everywhere, and he was warm. So warm. Chapter 20. Your Majesty, please. King Alain Gunder the Ninth threw himself down into his throne. Brand, it's one man, one. He swore a stream of curses. You would have to send my family to the country for fear of one man. Your Majesty, Lord General Brand Aegon said, the definition of man might not cover Durso Blint. I understand the implications. Indeed. Do you know the talk it will cause if I send my family away on a moment's notice? The king cursed again, unconsciously. I know what they say about me. I know. I'll not give them this to drool on, Brent. Your Majesty, this assassin is not given to idle threats. For the sake of all that's holy, he murdered his own apprentice to just make a point. A sham. Come on, General, you were drugged. You didn't know what was going on. My body was afflicted, not my mind. I know what I saw. The king sniffed. then curled his lip as he caught the faint odor of brimstone in the air. Damn it! Can't those idiots make anything work? One of the ducts that carried hot air from the Foss Island crack just north of the castle had broken again. He doesn't appreciate how much the engineers save us every year by heating the entire castle with pipes embedded in the very stones. He doesn't care that the turbines spinning in the wind, rising from the crack, give him the power of 200 windmills. That he smells brimstone once a fortnight infuriates him. Aegon wondered what god Cenarion had offended to deserve such a king. He should have pushed Regnisgeir. He should have spelled it out to him more clearly. He should have lied to him about what would happen to Nalia's children by Elaine. He could have served Regnus proudly and honorably. Maybe you saw him kill a boy, the king said. Who cares? You should. Regnus would have. It was obviously some street rat he picked up for the purpose of impressing you. With all due respect, sire, you're mistaken. I've dealt with formidable men. I faced Dorgan Dunwell in single combat. I fought under Lord Graeblin's lay not lancers. Yes, 1,000 goddamn battles from my goddamn father's time. Very impressive, the king said. But you never learned anything about ruling, did you? General Aegon stiffed. Not like you have, your majesty. Well, if you had, General, you'd know that you can't damage your own reputation. He cursed long and unfluently again. Flee my own castle in the night. There was no working with him. The man shamed Aegon, and should have shamed himself. Yet Aegon was sworn to him, and he decided long ago that an oath measured to the man who gave it. It was like his marriage. He wouldn't take back the vows simply because his wife couldn't give him children. But did vows hold when your own king had plotted to take your life, and not in honorable battle, but with an assassin's blade in the night? That had been before Aegon had sworn his allegiance to the man. However, now that he had sworn, it didn't matter that had he known then what he knew now, he would have chosen to die rather than serve Elaine Gunder the Ninth. Your Majesty, may I at least have permission to hold an exercise tonight for my guards and include your mage? The captain is in the habit of doing such things unannounced to keep the men at the ready, though I wonder why I preserve your empty head. Oh, to the hell with you, General, you and your goddamn paranoia. Fine, do as you please. General Aegon turned to leave the throne room. The king's predecessor, Davin, had been empty-headed too, but he known it, and he deferred to his counselors. Elaine the Tenth, this king's son, was only 14 years old, but he showed promise. He seemed to have gotten some of his mother's intelligence at least. If the 10th were old enough to take power, maybe I provoked this assassin. Dear God, maybe I'd hire him. General Aegon shook his head. That was treason. It had no place in a general's mind. Burgon Safasti had been appointed to serve in Scenaria more for his political acuity than his talent. The truth was, he'd barely earned his blue robe, but his talents, if not his talents, had served him well in Scenaria. The king was both stupid and foolish, but he could be worked with if one didn't mind petulance and showers, of course. But tonight, Fergus was wandering the castle as if he were a guard. He appealed to the king, but Elaine the Ninth. They called him Niner, short for the 9-year-old, and not the ninth. Only when drinking with friends, had cursed him and ordered him to do whatever the Lord General said. As far as Fergus was concerned, Lord General Aegon was a relic. It was too bad that he hadn't been able to adapt to Niner. The old man had things to offer. Then again, the fewer counselors the king had, the more important Fergus became. Disgusted with his night's excitement, what was he looking for anyway? Fergus continued his lonely circuit of the castle yard. He'd considered asking for an escort, but mages were supposed to be more deadly than any 100 men. If that wasn't exactly true, in his case, it didn't do him any good to advertise the fact. The castle yard was an irregular diamond, 300 paces wide and almost 400 long. It was bordered on the northwest and southeast by the river, as the Plith, split for half a mile by Voss Island, came rushing back together south of the castle. The yard was animated with the sounds of men, horses, and dogs settling down for the night. It was early enough that men were still up gambling in the barracks, and the sounds of a lyre and good-natured cursing floated a short way into the dense fog. Fergus pulled his cloak tighter around his shoulders. The sliver of moon wasn't doing much to penetrate the cold fog pouring off the rivers and through the gates. The wet air kissed Fergus's neck, and he regretted his recent haircut. The king had mocked his long hair, but Fergus's lover had adored it. And now that his hair was short, the king mocked him for that. The fog billowed strangely at the iron gate, and Fergus froze. He embraced the power. Embrace. He'd always thought it felt more like a wrestling match, and peered through the fog. Once he held it, the power calmed him. He could see nothing threatening, and his hearing and sight were sharper. Breathing deeply, Fergus made himself continue past the gate. He didn't know if it was his imagination, but it felt like the fog pressed against the whole wall of the castle, like an invading army, and poured in through the breach of the iron gate. Fog pulled almost to his shoulders, and the torches mounted over the heads of the two guards did little to cut the mist. Nodding to them, Fergus turned and started walking back to the castle. He felt the weight between his shoulder blades, as of eyes boring into him, and repressed the urge to look over his shoulder. But as he walked toward the stables, the feeling only grew. The air felt heavy, so thick it was like walking through soup. The fog seemed to curl around him in his passing and lick at the back of his bare neck, taunting him. With the rising of the fog, the moon and stars totally disappeared. The world was enveloped in cloud. Fergus stumbled as he passed by the corner of the stables. He threw a hand out to steady himself against the wood. He threw a hand out to steady himself against the wood, but felt something yielding for a moment before it disappeared. Something like he touched a man standing there. Staggering back in fear, Fergus clawed for the embrace. Excuse me. He could see nothing. There was no one there. Finally, his talent came to him. He caught a brief flicker of movement into the stables, but it might have been his imagination. Had he smelled garlic? Surely that could only be his imagination. But why would he imagine such a thing? He hesitated for a long moment. But he was a weak mage, not a weak man. He readied a fireball and drew his knife. He came wide around the corner, straining every sense magical and mundane. He jumped through the door and looked around frantically. Nothing. The horses were in their stalls, their odors mingling with the heavy fog. He could only hear the stamping of hooves and the even breathing of sleeping animals. Fergus probed the darkness for any signs of movement, but saw nothing. The longer he looked, the more foolish he felt. Part of him thought he should go deeper into the stables. And part of him wanted to leave now. No one would know that he left. He could go to the other side of the castle and wander there. On the other hand, if he single-handedly caught an intruder, the king would doubtless reward him well. If neither were good for anything, it was rewarding his friends. Slowly, Fergus drew the fire he'd prepared into visible form. It flickered a little, and then held, burning in his palm. A horse in the first stall snorted, suddenly shying back, and Fergus moved to shush the beast. But with fire in one hand and a gleaming knife in the other, the horse was hardly calmed. It whined loudly and stomped on the ground, waking the neighbors. Shh, Fergus said. Relax, it's only me. But an unfamiliar man with mage fire was too much for the animals. They started neighing loudly. The stallion in the second stall started kicking. Would you stop scaring horses? The loud voice said behind him. Fergus was so startled he dropped his knife and lost the fire in his hand. He wheeled around. It was just the stable master, a squat, bearded man from the Isle of Planka. Lord Gamut came in behind Fergus, holding a lantern. He gave Fergus a look of pure disdain, while the mage picked his knife gingerly out of the pile of horse droppings. Dork moved round the row quickly, and at his touch and his voice, the horses calmed instantly. Fergus watched, feeling awkward. Finally, Dork came back past him. I was just Use a lantern, you nut, Dork said. He stuck his lantern into Fergus' hand. He walked away, saying to himself, Scaring my damn horses with witch fire. It's mage fire. There's a difference, Fergus said to his back. Dork stormed out of the stables, and Fergus had barely turned around when he heard a thump. Fergus ran outside. Dork was lying on the ground, unconscious. Before he could shout anything, Fergus felt something hot in his neck. He reached a hand up and felt something take the lantern gently out of his other hand. His muscles went rigid. The light went out. Yes, sneaky. Chapter 21. What the hell have you done? Mama Kay asked, looking up as Durso crashed through the door. Excuse me. Good work, Durso said. And with time left for a night out. He grinned sloppily. He reeked of alcohol and garlic. I don't care about your binges. What have you done to ASOS? She looked at the still form lying on the bed in her home's guest room. Nothing, Durso said, grinning foolishly. Check. Ain't nothing wrong with him. What do you mean? He's unconscious. I came back here and the servants were all in a flutter because you had appeared here with... They said it was a corpse. I came up and Asos was here. I can't wake him. He's dead to the world. For some reason, that set Durso off. He started laughing. Mama Kay slapped him hard. Tell me what you've done. Have you poisoned him? That brought Durso back. He shook his head, trying to clear it. He's dead. He has to be dead. Whatever do you mean? Grinweir Gorges, Durso said. I can't say. Someone threatened me. Someone who can do what they said. Said they'd come after Aso first, then you, and they knew about Wanda. Mama Kay drew back. Who had the power to threaten Durso? Who or what could scare Durso Blind? Durso sank onto a chair and put his face in his hands. They have to think he's dead, especially after tonight. You faked killing Azoth. Durso nodded. To show I didn't care. To show they couldn't push me. But you do, Mama Kay thought, and they can. She knew Durso was thinking it too. The wet boy had never been as invincible as he seemed. And when his control cracked, it burst wide open. The best Mama Kay could do was make sure that Durso went to one of her brothels and have someone keep an eye on him. He might be there for 2 or 3 days straight, but she could make sure he was safe, relatively. I'll take care of the boy, Mama Kay heard herself saying. Do you have any idea what to do with him once he wakes up? He'll stay with the Drakes like we're planning. He's dead to this world. What did you use? Durso looked at her confused. What poison? Never mind, just tell me, how long will he be unconscious? I don't know. Mama Kay's eyes narrowed. She wanted to slap him again. The man was insane. Even for a poisoner as gifted as Durso. It was too easy to misjudge with a child. I will have to be right back, guys. There we go. I'm back. A child wasn't simply a scaled-down adult. Thurso could have killed him. Thurso might have killed him. Azoth might never recover, or he might wake and be an idiot, or not have the functions of his limbs. You knew he might die, she said. Sometimes you have to gamble. Thurso patted his pockets, looking for garlic. You're starting to love that boy, and it scares the hell out of you. Part of you wants him dead, doesn't it, Thurso? If I have to listen to your chit-chat, can't you at least give me a drink? Tell me. Life's empty. Love's a failure. Better he dies now than get us both killed later. With that, Blint seemed to deflate. Mama Kay knew he would say no more. How long will you be whoring? She asked. I don't know, Blint said, barely stirring. Damn you, longer or shorter than usual? Longer, Thurso said after a minute. Definitely longer. The stream of curses preceded the king into the throne room by a good 10 seconds. Lord General Aegon could hear servants scurrying out of the way, see the guards at the entrances of the throne room shifting uncomfortably, and note that whatever staff members didn't absolutely need to be there were fleeing. King Elaine IX barged in. Brand, you pile of... The Lord General mentally erased a long list of repulsive things he resembled and refocused his attention when Nina got to the point. What happened last night? Your Majesty, the Lord General said, we don't know. Another stream of curses, some of them more creative than usual. But Niner wasn't terribly creative, and no one dared to swear in his presence. So his arsenal was limited to variations of the word shit. What we do know is this, Brand Aegon said. Someone broke into the castle. I suppose we can assume it was the man we've spoken about. No need for listening spies to learn everything. They're so blind, the king said, nodding. The Lord General sighed. Yes, your Majesty. He apparently rendered unconscious one guard in the castle itself, and Fergus Safasti and your stablemaster in the stables. More curses then. What do you mean, rendered unconscious? The king paced back and forth. They didn't have any marks on them, and they couldn't remember anything. Though the guard had a small puncture wound on his neck, as if from a needle. The king cursed more, and then cursed the abashed mage. As usual, Aegon found himself getting more bored than offended. The king's curses didn't mean anything except, look at me, I'm a spoiled child. Niner finally stumbled across another point. There were nothing else. We haven't found anything yet, sire. None of the guards outside your room, your wives, your daughters, or your sons reported seeing anything unusual. It isn't fair, the king said, stomping over to his throne. What have I done to deserve this? He threw himself down in his throne and squealed. He practically flew out of the throne. He clutched Lord General Aegon. Oh gods, I'm feeling faint. I'm dying. Damn you all, I'm dying. Guards, help! Guards! The king's voice pitched higher and higher, and he started crying as the guards blew whistles and rang bells, and the throne room roared to life. General Aegon plucked the king's hands free and put the weak-kneed man in the arms of his sycophant, Fergan Safasti, who didn't know enough to hold on. The king collapsed to the ground and wept like a child. General Aegon ignored him and strode to the throne. In a moment, he saw what he was looking for, a fat, long needle pointing up from a well-worn cushion on the throne. He tried to pull it out with his fingers, but the needle stuck. It was supported so that it wouldn't just fold over if the king sat on it wrong. General Aegon drew his knife and slit the cushion open. He pulled out the needle, ignoring the bells, ignoring the guards pouring into the room, surrounding the king and herding everyone else into a side room where they could be held and questioned. Lord General Aegon pulled out the needle. A note tied to it said, "I could have been poisoned." "Move aside," a little man from the back was calling out, pushing soldiers out of his way. It was the king's physician. "Let him through," the Lord General ordered. The soldiers moved back from the king, who was whimpering on the floor. Brent motioned to the physician, showed him the note, and whispered, "The king will need some poppy wine, maybe a lot, but he isn't poisoned." "Thank you," the man said. Behind him, the king had pulled down his pants and was arching his neck, trying to see the wound on his buttock. "But believe me, I know how to deal with him." The general suppressed a smile. "Escort the king to his apartments," he told the guards. "Set a watch on the door, with 2 captains inside the room. The rest of you return to your duties." "Brant!" the king yelled as the guards picked him up. "Brant, I want him dead, damn it! I want him dead." Brant Aegon didn't move until the throne was empty once more. The king wanted to wage a war against the shadow. A shadow with no corporal parts except the steel of its blades. Be right back, guys. I am back. Hi, Void. I really like this story. I'm staying quiet because I want to hear it all. No worries, sweetie. No worries.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Now, where were we? I'm really sorry for the interruptions, guys. This is my boy. Keep calling. So, the king wanted to wage war against a shadow with no corporal parts except, hi AJ, the steel of his blades. That was what it would be to assassinate a wet boy. Or worse, how many men would die before the king's pride was salved? Oops. Oops, what? Did you use a note? No? I meant to do that during the break. Mobile lag. Ah, no worries. A shadow with no parts except note. Uh, oh my god. The law. The law is here, guys. Be careful. Your new favorite sound? My lord, I've been here all along. I know you were. I know you were here, sweetie. I know. But now you both are here. You were just nuding? Well, it's good that you guys have fun with that. My lord, a woman asked tentatively. It was one of the housekeepers. She had a wrapped bundle in her hands. I was chosen to report for the housekeeper, sir. But with the king gone and all, could I? The general looked at her closely. She was an old woman, obviously afraid of her life. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Nikolai just came home. Be right back. There we go. No law allowed? Yeah, I agreed. The general looked at her closely. She was an old woman, obviously afraid for her life. He bet she was chosen by having pulled a short straw. What is it? Us housekeepers found these. Someone left them in each of the royal bedchambers, sir. The housekeeper handed him the bundle. 6 black daggers were inside it. Where? Brent asked, choking the word out. Under, under the royal family's pillows, sir. What are you doing? Oh, going home. Chapter 22. This is gonna be the last chapter, guys. Little feet pattered into Azar's consciousness. It was a strange sound to hear when you were dead. Someone trying to launch a supply chain attack on the royal family. Brah. Oh, no, no, no. No bra moments, guys. No, 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 no. It was a strange sound to hear when you were dead. Wait, a new combo? Artesian wing, yeah, that is definitely great. Great combo, AJ. What doesn't work? I think you should do the other way around, actually. No, try do the other one. Try reverse them. What? Yeah, that doesn't work. I love the colors though. I will say this. I love the fans though. The artesian wings. I do love that. It's looking really cool. But yeah, it doesn't really work with what you're trying to do. There we go. Much better. All right, let's get back to the book. Last chapter. Can you give me an uptime, by the way? I have a feeling my stream elements is showing wrong. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's showing wrong. Little feet pattered into Azar's consciousness. It was a strange sound to hear when you were dead, but Azaz couldn't sort it out any other way. Bare little feet on stone. He must be outside, because the sound didn't reverberate against any walls. He tried to open his eyes and failed. Maybe this is what it was to be dead. Maybe you never left your body. Maybe you laid inside your corpse and had to just feel as you slowly decomposed. He hoped dogs didn't get to him, or wolves. He had terrifying dreams of a wolf grinning at him, yellow eyes ablaze. If he were stuck in his dead body, what would happen if they started tearing pieces off of him? Would he find oblivion like he finally fallen asleep? Or would he just split into pieces of consciousness and slowly dissipate into the soil after passing through the bellies of a dozen beasts? Something touched his face and his eyes leaped open. He heard the startled gasp before his eyes could focus on who made it. It was a little girl, maybe 5 years old. Her eyes so wide they covered half of her face. Never seen a corpse? She asked. Father, father, she shrieked with all of the surprising volume small children can muster. He groaned as the sound jammed knives in his head, and he fell back on the pillows. Pillows? So he wasn't dead. That was probably supposed to be a good thing. When he woke again, time must have passed, because the room was light and airy. Wide windows had been thrown open, and cherrywood furnishings and marble flooring gleamed in the sunlight. Azoth recognized the molding ceiling. He stared at it before. He was in Count Drake's guest room. Back from the dead, are you? Count Drake asked. He was smiling. Seeing the look on Azoth's face, he added, Here. Now, sorry. Don't think about it. Don't think at all. Eat. He set a plate full of steaming eggs and ham in front of Azoth, along with a glass of well-watered wine. Oi, Clancy! I will. Later this evening. I promise. And earlier than I did yesterday. Can I have a shout out for Lanspoon, please?
Yes! Yes!
The ever whipping Lanspoon. Go to bed. Ay, ay, ay. The food spoke directly with Asa's stomach, completely bypassing higher cognitive functions. It was several minutes later when he realized the plate and the glass were both empty. Better, the Count said. He sat on the edge of the bed and absently polished his pince nez. Do you know who I am and why you are here? Good. Do you remember who you are? Athos nodded slowly. Kylar. Excuse me. I've been given some messages for you, but if you're not feeling well enough... No, please, Kylar said. Master Tully says that your work now is to get ready for your new life and to get well. To wit. Keep your arse in bed. I expect you to be ready when I come get you. Kylar laughed. That was Master Blint, all right. When is he coming then? A troubled look passed over the Count's face. Not for a while, but you don't need to worry about that. You'll be living here now, permanently. You'll continue your lessons with your master, of course, but we'll be doing all we can to get the look of the street off of you. Your master said to tell you that you aren't going to be well as soon as you expect. There's something else I want to tell you, though, about your little friend. You mean... She's doing well, Kylar. She is? Her new family has named her Aline. She has good clothes, 3 meals a day. They are good people. They'll love her. She'll have a real life now. But if you're to be any use of her, you need to get well. Kylar felt as if he were floating. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed brighter, sharper. An arrangement of orange roses and lavender glowed on the sill. He felt good in a way he hadn't since before Rat had become Black Dragon's fist. They even took her to a mage, and she said she'll be fine. But she couldn't do anything for the scars. Someone has just outlined all his happiness with Tar. I'm sorry, son, Count Drake said. But you've done the best you can, and I promise you she'll have a better life than she ever could have on the street. Kylar barely heard him. He stared out the window, away from the Count. I can't pay you yet. Not until I start getting my wages again from Master. My master. There's no rush. Pay me when you can. Oh, and one last thing your master asked me to pass along. He said, learn from these people those things that will make you strong. Forget the rest. Listen much, speak little, get well, and enjoy this. It may be the only happy time of your life. Kylar was bedridden for weeks. He tried to sleep as much as the Drakes told him to, but he had far too much time. He'd never had time before. He didn't like it. When he'd been on the street, every moment had been spent worrying about his next meal, or worrying about Rat, or any of the older boys or girls terrorizing him. With Master Blint, he'd been kept so busy training that he didn't have time to think. Sitting in bed all day and all night, he had nothing but time. Training was impossible. Reading was possible, but still excruciating. For a while, Asa spent his time becoming Kylar, with the guidelines Master Blint had given him, and the facts that anyone checking would find. He had made up more stories about his family, the area he was from, and the adventures he had, keeping them harmless, the way people like to think 11-year-olds' lives were. He soon mastered that, though, and most of the time thought of himself as Kylar. He was getting to know Count Drake's daughters too. Elena was the pretty 5-year-old he scared half to death when he first woke. Max was a gangly 8, and Sarah, an alternately awkward and aloof 12. They provided some diversion, but the Countess kept them from bothering Kylar so he could get his rest. The Count and Countess were fascinating, but Count Drake was working most of the time, and the Countess had definite ideas about 11-year-old boys, which didn't coincide at all with what Kylar knew about 11-year-old boys. He could never decide if she knew what he was and pretended not to, so she could reform him, or if Count Drake had kept her in the dark. She was willowy, fair-skinned, and blue-eyed, an earthly vision of the heavenly beings that Drakes believed in, like the Count. She had beliefs about serving Kylar himself, as if to prove that she didn't think herself above it. But it wasn't a false humility. When Kylar had gotten terribly ill the first week and vomited all over the floor, she'd come in and held him until he was done shaking. And then she rolled up her sleeves and cleaned up the vomit herself. He'd been too sick to even be properly horrified until long afterward. He couldn't count on the time she came in to stuff him with food, or check on how he was feeling, or to read him stupid kid books. The books were full of valiant heroes who killed evil witches. Children never had to dig through heaps of garbage and vomit outside and in looking for scraps of edible food. Older boys never tried to bugger them. They never abandoned their friends. The princesses they saved never had their faces battered beyond recognition. No one was ever so badly scarred that a mage couldn't fix it. Hylar hated the stories, but he knew the Countess only wanted the best for him. So he nodded and smiled, and cheered when the heroes won, as they did every time. No wonder all the little nobles want to lead armies. If it were like the books their mothers read, it would be fun. It would be fun if you felt satisfied when the bad guy died rather than wanting to puke because you saw raw cartilage and gushing blood where you could cut off an ear. Blood wafting in a million beautiful swirls with water as he bled to death. He held under the water by the rope you tied around his ankle. The Countess always interpreted his shaking and nausea after she was done with the stories and a need for more rest. So after raising memories to haunt Kylo's room, she'd leave him with their angry ghosts. Every night, Kylar became Azoth. Every night, Azoth turned from the repair bay and saw Rat walking toward him, naked, hairy, massive, eyes glowing with lust. Every night, Azoth watched Rat splashing into the water, straining against the weight tied to his ankle. Every night he watched Rat carve doll girl's face. The nightmares woke him, and he lay in bed fighting the memories. Azoth had been weak, but Azoth was no more. Kyler was strong. Kyler had acted. Kyler would be like Master Blint. He would never be afraid. It was better now. It was better to lie in bed, having nightmares, than it was to listen to Jarl getting buggered, weeping. Sleeping again only moved him from one nightmare to another. They brought little relief, and only slowly did the memories fade. Every morning he told himself that he'd done what he had to, that he had to kill Rat, that he had to abandon Doll Girl, that he had to leave Jarl, that it was best that he never see them again, that he couldn't have known what would happen to Doll Girl. He told himself that life was empty, that he was taking away anything of value when he took a life. He wouldn't have made it without Logan Guy's visits. Every other day, Logan would come to see him. Inevitably with Sarah Drake. At first, Kylo thought he came because he felt guilty, but that soon passed. They enjoyed each other's company, and they became fast friends. Logan was strange. He was as smart as Jarl, and he read hundreds of books. Kylo didn't think he would survive for a week in the Warrens, but at the same time, he spoke about court politics as if it were all so easy. He knew the names, histories, friends, and enemies of scores of courtiers, and knew the major life events of and important motivations of every highly ranked noble in the kingdom. Half the time, Kylo didn't know if he didn't understand what Logan was talking about, because it all were all part of the courtly life he'd never known, or just because Logan liked to use big words. A sequipedalian, he called himself, whatever that meant. Nonetheless, the friendship worked, and Sarah Drake helped it work by happening to stop by often so she could be with Logan. She filled in the gaps. Kylar couldn't count the times he sat silent because he hadn't understood some reference Logan had made. The silence would begin to stretch, but before Logan could ever ask him why he didn't understand, Sarah would get uncomfortable and launch into something else entirely. The chatter might have driven Kylar mad if he hadn't been so thankful for it. Anyway, maybe this was how noble girls were. Kylar was sitting in bed one morning after having spent another night cowering under the covers. He dreamed that he had been the one beating doll girl, that it had been his feet kicking her, an exultating rhythm in his eyes as her beauty melted in the heat of his fury. Count Drake came in. His fingers were ink-stained and he looked tired. He pulled a chair close to the bed. "We think the danger's past," he said. "Excuse me," Kylo said. "I'm sorry. We had to keep you in the dark, Kylar. But we had to make sure you didn't do anything rash. In the past few weeks, there have been a number of attempts on your master's life. And consequently, there are now 4 fewer wet boys in the city. After 3 attempts, your master let the king know that if there were any more attempts, the king would die next." "Master Blint killed the king?" Kyler asked. "Shh! Don't say that name. Not even here," Count Drake said. "One of the 9, Dabin Vorsha, the man in charge of the Zarkaja smuggling, heard about your master's threat to the king. He decided it would be a good time to make his own play for power and send a wet boy after Durso, thinking Durso would either be killed or would kill the king in retaliation. Durso found out and killed both the wet boy and Volsha. "You mean all this has been happening while I've been lying in bed?" "There were no way you could help," Count Drake said. "But what did Dabin Vosha have against my master?" Kylar had never even heard the name. "I don't know. Maybe nothing." "That's the way Sarkage works, Kylar. There are plots within plots, and most of them go nowhere. Most of them take one step and then die, like this one. If you worry about what everyone is trying to do, you become a spectator and not a player. Anyway, the king's learned of the last attempt on your master's life and has become very frightened. Usually this would be good news, but he's rather clumsily consolidating his power. Logan is going to have to spend a while out of the city." He was just starting to be my friend, Kyla said. Believe me, son, a man like Logan Geyer will be your friend for life. And that, my sweet friends, is that for today. We have reached chapter 23. And oh boy, all the things that are happening. No! Yes. The law is here. Mama has to obey, sadly. And also my voice is in need of a rest. Um Let me do this. It is my pleasure. I love doing this. I should have done that way sooner. Um Oh, thanks, Pripsy. So let's see. Mm-hmm. Come there. Mew wants attention. Should we raid Viasun? Fresh undies? We could do that. Or we could raid Hetty. I will say this, Viasun is playing Stellaris. We could raid Hetty, who is playing ESO. Or we could raid Mione, who is playing Final Fantasy. What do you guys think? Whoever, I'll have to bounce off the raid. Let's raid Viasun. The crazy from down under. Let's make him happy. So get ready to copy and paste this, guys. I thank you so much for spending time with me yet again. Thank you for note. Thank you to Rob for resubbing with the tier 3 for 7 months. I love you. Thank you guys for stopping by. So stick around for the raid, guys. I really appreciate it.
And I will see you later tonight for some Immortal Redeemer and Vet Rock Grove Hard Mode. So, good night, guys. Not good night. See you later. Damn it. I'm not used to streaming in the morning. I will see you later, guys. And take care. Bye bye. Note, note.
Doc Raiden, thank you for the raid, girl. I appreciate it, but I'm about to end stream myself pretty soon, about an hour from now. But I hope you're doing well.